Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hello and welcome to another classic episode of the A Winner Is You podcast. If this is your first time listening, think of us as your friendly neighbourhood video game book club. We pick a game, then scurry off, play it before coming back together to have a deep dive discussion. We talk ins, we talk outs, we talk ups, we talk downs, and hopefully offer some light entertainment and maybe, if you're lucky, some insight along the way. Whether you've played a game alongside us in anticipation of the podcast, whether you've played the game before, or even if the game is nestled comfortably into your pile of shame, there will be something here for you. So be rest assured that we have got you covered this evening, or today, or this morning, or last night, whenever. This week we kick off our annual Spooktoberfest, easy for me to say, with a horror game taken from the annals of 2016, the cult classic that is Layers of Fear, as described by Google as a psychological horror game. So, while you reach for the cushion to hide behind, so you can get your ears accustomed to our dulcet tones, my name as ever is David, and sitting 75 miles across from me is Mr. Alex Aldridge. How you doing today, buddy? Are you ready to be psychologically horrored?
Yeah.
How's your psychology sitting?
Another Halloween havoc.
I'm liking the t-shirt you've brought to the table. I've just noticed.
I love this shirt. This is the best
it's
one I've
so
bought
good,
from
so
that
good.
Dracula bite by a long way. Even if it does have the Marilyn Manson font, I can live with it.
If we keep talking about Dracula bite, they'll eventually sponsor us and give us a free t-shirt of some kind, maybe, if we're lucky.
I'll get on it after the podcast.
Get straight on it. Hey, Dracula bite, we talk about it all the time. Alec, one half of us are always wearing the t-shirts. Can you give us some
fucking money?
Free merch and loot?
I need it for IBS medicine, as previously discussed.
Have you had any more shitscapades?
Yeah, plenty.
Glad
I seem to be
it.
on like basically a cycle now of constipated, then I do about 9 shits the next day. So it's great fun. I couldn't go to Tottenham at the weekend because I couldn't stay off the toilet. And then Sunday, never went once.
You can't even make a
Fucking
joke
bollocks.
saying that they're their own type of shit because they're quite good this season.
The shit is coming out of Liverpool, who are quite frankly a disgrace. If there are any Liverpool fans listening, your club's embarrassed you there, boys.
What's the story with Mo Salah? Because I am other than the chat I get, and I sort of vaguely follow what Spurs are up to, basically because of you. But apart from that, I am entirely disgusted and checked out. I've had enough of Man United being.
So you don't? Do you even know what happened in the Spurs game? Then do you know anything about it?
Nothing.
Right. Okay. So Liverpool, having gone down to 10 men, took the lead. Linesman flagged for offside. So they went to VAR to check it. VAR did all the checks, and then said check complete. So the game carried on. Offside was given. Spurs take the free kick. Off they go. Now, I remember at the time looking at it when they were looking at the views, being like, "That's fucking well onside." Like, how have they said that that's not onside? Turns out that the VAR guy thought the on-field decision was onside. So he checked it, saw it was clearly onside, was like, "Yep, check complete." Spurs take the free kick, off they go. And then Liverpool had such a hissy fit about this. They put out a statement basically saying that the decision went against sporting integrity and that they were going to look into the range of options available to them after this, which, as we all know, is nothing and like it. Because imagine if they forced Spurs to replay the game. Well, like, no one would ever accept losing a game ever fucking again. And we'll have the Champions League final back as well if you're doing that. Fucking handball penalty after 22 seconds. Anyway, so because of that, the PGMOL have actually released the audio of the VAR that Sky have just put out like an hour ago, where you can hear the guy be like, "Yep, check complete." They take the free kick and the guy's like, mate, on-field was offside. Are you happy with that? He's like, "What?" They're like, yeah. On-field decision was offside. They've just taken a free kick. He was like, and then he starts swearing and stuff. And he's like, "No! Like, delay the game. Like, pull the game back." They're like, "We can't pull the game back. Spurs have taken a free kick." So he's
wild.
It is wild. Like, obviously the guy's just made a genuine good faith mistake. because he thought he was doing the right. He just so obviously onside. That's what he thought had been given. Off you go. But and then obviously Liverpool got 2 men sent off and Spurs won by an own goal in the 96th minute. So it's fucking brilliant. Oh my god, the tears, the salt. Oh god, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
They need to do something about video referees. I mean, like obviously the Rugby World Cup is ongoing at the moment, and they've got.
Can you hear do they have VAR for that?
Yeah, so VAR.
Can you hear them on the TV?
Yeah.
I heard. Yeah, I saw somebody saying that in rugby you can hear like every part of like VAR and the ref on field.
Yeah, so the ref is mic'd up, much like they are in football. However, you can buy. They're changing it so you can download an app for free next season, I think it is. But you can buy a radio transmitter, and you can tune in to the ref's mic, so you can sit in the stadium and just listen to what he's saying the whole time.
Like those nutters who like steal police radio.
Yeah, pretty much. Like so they're both good and bad at it. They're good in the way that they talk through the decisions. You can hear how they come to their decisions. So even if you don't agree with it, you're like, well, this is the process they've followed. So if you're a normal human being and not a Twitter lunatic, you can kind of at least understand how they've got where they've got. The problem is, so they've introduced a new thing for the World Cup. There's a lot of things going on where it was like this video assistant stuff where they were like standing, looking at it, and then talking through what they're doing. It's holding up the game. So now if you get a yellow card in rugby, you're off the field for 10 minutes. And if you get a red card, you're just off completely. Yeah. So if you commit an offence that's big enough to be a yellow card, what they do now is to say it's a yellow card offence, they send you off, and then the bunker, they call it the bunker, they go away and they decide whether they're going to upgrade it to a red or not during those 10 minutes to try and speed up the pace of play. The problem with that is, like, I'm assuming, just like with football, the point in having video refereeing is to increase the correct decisions made and reduce sort of interpretation of rules. You know, like essentially make decisions more consistent. It's not doing anything like that. If anything, it's making it worse. Like there's like stuff happening in games. You're like, well, that's a yellow, and then they're like, nah, it's fine. And then there's other things that are happening. It's fine, and they're like, nah, it's a red. It's just totally inconsistent, and everybody's just confused now in rugby to the point that they don't know what a yellow card is. They don't know what a red card is. So like, it's just like, well, it's just like up to luck of the draw now. It's a total mess. Like video refereeing, I get the thought process behind it, but it is not making the sport, especially where rugby is concerned, it is not making it a more consistent sport. To the point that I know friends that like football who are just completely so off football now, not because they disagree with the idea of video refereeing, but because they don't think it's not doing what it's meant to be doing, according to them.
It's a misconstrued idea, right? So the idea of the fans' idea of VAR is, well, everything's going to be right now.
Yeah.
But that puts even more pressure on the VAR. Yeah. If they make any mistake, because again, they are just humans looking at stuff, then people lose their shit. Yeah. But it was never still going to be 100%. It's gone up from, like, apparently in football, it's something like gone from 90% of decisions were right to like 92%. It's not worth that.
It's not worth that because, like,
it's just not worth it.
The few games of like football I've watched, it does upset the flow of the game, and it makes
and ruins goals.
Yeah, I get it. You want to get as many decisions correct, but I don't think the trade-off they're making at the moment is worth this 2% increase. It's not.
It's not. It's definitely.
If it was up at like 97, 98, 99, then there's an argument to be made that yes, but it's not doing that.
No.
Anyway, This is a video game podcast.
It is. It's a spooky one because it's October and we're going to scare you shitless.
Yeah, we can't talk about it.
Layers of Fear did to me.
We can't talk about it, though. It's a psychological horror game. I think of the psychological damage that's been done to you by Spurs over the years, and me being Scottish, and the psychological damage that's going to happen to me this weekend when Scotland inevitably lose to Ireland and go out of the World Cup. So it is... The psychological damage is done. Now that the discussion is this more psychologically damaging to us than sport?
I didn't. Well, I mean, yeah, I shouldn't have any capacity for psychological damage left. But fuck me, did Layers of Fear do its damnedest for at least the first half until I really watched, a master of calm at work in you, just casually chatting about what was in the house and how nice it would be to live in a house like that while I'm fucking terrified. I thought I really need to suck this up and like be a big boy because
So there's two things to
I
that.
paused it so frequently. I would turn it on and have paused it in 20 seconds. Be like, oh, just going to flick through my phone and look at something about Tottenham to make myself cheered up. It's horrible.
There are
so
two things
scared.
to that, and I do think like both are valid. So like we discovered that I was playing a version of the game that was very different from the version that you were playing with. You started off with the 2016 version of this game, and I kicked off with the 2023 remake and sort of conglomeration of Layers of Fear 1, 2, and the DLC. So like,
and apparently new content as well.
Entire characters that are not in the 2016 version of the game.
Yeah.
So and they had redone it. You said the first one's in Unity, the second one, Layers of Fear, is in Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
In a weird way, because in my brain I always I would think the opposite is true, but for this particular game, the game in Unity to me is much more atmospheric than it is in Unreal Engine.
Would you that's purely on a visual standpoint?
Bizarrely, it was clearer, crisper, and brighter, which you wouldn't think of because you think Gears of War, brown sludge, but it was just the opposite of that. Like in the Unreal version, it was darker. So like when you would see a ghost go across the screen in the Unreal version, it was just sort of, I don't want to say rubbish enough, but I can't think of another word off the top of my head. It was just like the graphics were just shit enough that actually was quite unsettling.
Don't want to say rubbish.
So
they were just shit enough.
Yeah. And then beyond that,
yeah, I can understand that. Like there is an element of like vaselining up something to make it smudged.
There's bits where
appealing.
like a sort of ethereal figure will go from one door to another and they'll sort of jitter across the screen in that sort of like old school like Japanese horror kind of way.
Of course,
they do not do that in the remake. They'll just sort of like run across and they look a bit see-through and they're just not as scary for some reason. And the other thing is,
plus you're fighting them off, right, with some sort of lantern.
You do eventually you get a lantern and you start fighting them off, and if you don't fight them off, they kill you. I'm interested to actually see how that affects. I guess we'll get to the endings, but there's a part where you've actually got to interact and let the ghost get to you in the 2016 version, and you're literally fighting it off in the 2023 version. So I don't know how that changes things. But the other one, and I think I said to you that I thought you were speaking utter garbage, but in experiencing both of them, you were spot on. The presence of voice acting creates a sort of it dissipates any sense of like loneliness and spookiness.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting listening to someone talk while you're walking around. It's like sticking an audiobook on. Whereas having to like go around this really dark and dingy house that you're not sure what's happening, like odd things are happening, and it's a horror game, so you're expecting something to happen, which is half the fear in itself. Having to pick something up and read it while it's happening is so much more atmospheric, I found, than actually listening to someone read something out.
Totally. Because the game has excellent sound design for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's all removed if all you've got is like echoey voices just following you every step you take. It's that sound of silence, and then anything that breaks that silence is what becomes scary. Unless it's just a guy talking about a painting or some shit. Yeah. I don't know.
Did you like the game?
I thought it was fucking brilliant. Yeah.
I would say 75 to 80% of it. There was
I didn't like the checkerboard bollocks at the end.
Checkerboard stuff was just weird. There was a couple of times that I was playing the game and like you obviously there was a lot of really cool sort of bait and switch stuff. So you'd walk through a door and you'd open a door and the door would be a dead end, and then you'd turn around and the whole environment around you had changed. There's a couple of times that would happen where you obviously had to be in this room and in this space while whatever they had animation played out and whatever story bit they had to play out. That I was standing around thinking, am I missing something? Does that make sense? So like all the doors would be locked and then I'd be like try to open them all, and then something would start happening. You'd be like standing, and rather than obviously what it was meant to do is scare me and make me run around, like try and open the doors while all this is happening, I was just like, am I missing something? And obviously it just wanted the X to play through to Y, and then it would like unlock a door and let you continue. And I got a bit confused at certain points. Does that make sense? Like
there's a part of it, I think, when you go in the kitchen and like there's a big painting on the wall and like loads of like fruit starts to come flying out of it. At the end of that sequence, a knife gets thrown into the wall right next to you.
Yeah.
At least it did for me.
Yeah,
Didn't for you, because you were somewhere else. And I don't think it didn't even seem like you'd noticed it when I watched you play, because it was kind of like, so, like you're saying, you're kind of like looking around like, what the fuck? You kind of missed. And that can be a problem, I guess, when everything is so like carefully micromanaged in a direction that you have to be paying attention.
It's the
to
major
what
problem
they want
with video
to scare
games,
you
isn't it?
with.
Yeah. It's a major problem with video games, and that's what makes, like, I think horror and comedy, but more specifically horror, quite difficult, because like if you're watching a horror movie, you can obviously you choose the camera angles, you choose the position of the actors and stuff like that, and you design the set, so you can manufacture something to happen in a certain way and largely predict what's going to be unfolding on screen, how the viewer's going to perceive that. You can't necessarily do that with games, can you? Because you like the player might be over in the other corner picking their nose, or like doing something totally like standing on a table, like squatting up and down or something like that. Just doing something really weird. Whereas I guess like stuff like that. But I'm glad they went for it, because there was occasions where knives would hit me, like come really close, and that did work. So like when it works, it works. But yeah, you're right, it's missable.
Yeah, but they do a good job, obviously, of like isolating you and locking you in room. Like anytime you go through a door where it has a sequence that you have to see, it would lock the door behind you over and over again. And like we had this discussion about how scared I was of it before we recorded this, and it was weird because when we first started playing, I remember saying to you, like, I was more scared about the fact that I know it's not going to do anything to the character. It's not going to, like, I'm not going to die and have to restart the game. I'm not going to get attacked. I don't have to fight anything off. I don't even have to hide from anything, like if it was like Outlast or Amnesia. And I said to you, like, I'd almost prefer that, because I know that all this game is going to do is make me jump, and there's nothing I can do to stop that. Like, if it's going to make me jump, I'm going to jump. And got to a stage, like, because I can't control that, because it's going to play a loud noise and I'm going to shit myself, I dreaded, like, turning around. Every time I came to a wall and I'd looked at something, I was like, I don't want to turn around. Because every time I do, at the moment, it makes a fucking horrible noise, or something pops out in front of me and I shit myself, even though none of it's going to hurt the character. And then towards the end of the game, I think I really did get to the stage where it's like, now I'm so aware that it's going to keep trying to do this. Although it does seem to stop doing that, I felt. Like, towards the end, it kind of like, it slows down and it goes more for like trying to creep you out with this horrible imagery, like when it started talking about your daughter and you've got these dolls everywhere.
It goes weird, yeah.
And when I knew that this ghost woman's just like, I felt like I'm supposed to be getting killed by her, which we'll talk about for the endings. When I know that the danger is something I'm actually supposed to be drawn to, I was just kind of like, well, now the danger is not something I have to avoid; it's something I actively have to seek almost. So I'm not as scared. So I think the ending of the game does drop the ball somewhat, or the fucking checker piece, because it's a bit of a damp squib. The very ending, where you get the different endings, great, because the story ties up really nicely, and I'll go into that.
Mm-hmm.
But that last task that it makes you do is apparently that was in your version, that it's the 2023 version, that is totally removed because they know how shite it is. So that was a real weird way to end that.
Sort of two things that jumped out to me when you're saying that. I'll try to write notes to keep up. I do think that the first thing is, I do think that, again, like talking more broadly about horror, I do think sticking the landing is quite a difficult thing in horror.
Yeah.
To do.
You're always a big proponent of like being shown the big bad. Like,
yes,
I've always remember you talking about that before.
I do.
Like, it's never. You're very rarely satisfied by the reveal of the whatever it is.
I think so. I think a lot of, at least from my perspective, a lot of fear comes from fear of the unknown. So it's
Yeah.
the what is around this corner, what is going to jump out at me, what is happening in this house. Once you actually learn what's happening in this house, that takes away a lot of the fear for me, and it just
It did.
yeah. And I think that's true again in this game. The other thing is that it jumped out at me is like you were talking about getting about the jump scares, and like that. I think that was another thing that maybe ratcheted down the fear slightly for me, is that I knew based on the mechanics of the game, I had no agency over what was happening. So I was essentially in a sort of in an interactive haunted house, and it would show me things as I gone around, and there wasn't any inherent danger. Whereas like Alien Isolation, for example, there was the fear came from the real fucking danger of the alien was going to get you. So what jumped out at me with that when you're talking about that is that, do you think, because obviously this is your experience, so only you know the answer to this, do you think that like does that end up being a good or a bad point for the game? Because to me, you were sort of describing being scared of the jump scare more than being sort of wrapped up in what was happening in the game. Does that make sense? You were like sort of, your tension was coming from going, oh god, there's a jump scare coming. Where is it? And it wasn't actually, oh, what's around this corner, because you're interested in sort of invested in the game. Or am I misreading what you're saying?
I think it was a bit of both. Like I thought the atmosphere of it was excellent, and the imagery as well throughout, like the whole design of the house and everything that you're sort of seeing in front of you was really creative. Like the different ways they tried to just make gross things and shocking things show up, I thought was really cool. But yeah, so it was almost like the opposite for me of what you've just described there. Whereas it was the fact that I did have no agency over what it was going to do was what was so scary to me, because even if I had to run from the alien, I can run from the alien and I can maybe manipulate the game in some way that the alien will go away. But the jump scares will never go away because it has to do the jump scare. I think there's one bit, when I sent you the voice clip of me going,
yeah.
When then Rachel had to shout upstairs because she'd just come home and heard me make that noise and was like, "Are you all right? What the fuck is that?"
Just playing video games.
I just said I'm just playing a really scary game, and she was like, "Why?" Well, because I have to, because it's October. I think that was the one where there's a painting, and I swear it looks like Richard III or some like old English king, and I'm pretty sure like you see a small version of it or something on a wall, and then you turn around and there's a massive version behind you. And then you turn around again and it just goes like,
yeah.
and something like zooms at you, and I just fucking shit myself because I thought the first scare had happened was the scare. So I was like, I saw something, I was like, oh, I'm going to turn around and the fucking photo is going to be behind me, isn't it? Yeah, there it is. You got me. And then I turn around again and then bang, just lost it. So I felt that it like really fucked with me, trying to predict to not be like, I'd be holding my breath. I do that all the time in like scary films. If I think something bad's gonna happen, so I don't go, I go, and then just wait with my breath held. And you can't make me jump now because I've already got my breath. You fucking did it. I don't know how it managed it.
You're right,
but
though.
Then,
so
yeah,
it sort of gives you
the woman.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So it sort of gives you because you're right. It does do this. It gives you the jump scare that you're expecting. But actually is a trick because it's not the jump scare that they're coming at you with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a bait and switch jump scare. It's like, yeah, really cleverly done for a lot of that stuff. And then there were obviously like some cheap ones where it's like, look at this thing above the fireplace, and you walk towards it and then you fucking fall through the floor, or a ceiling drops on you, or all that kind of shit. I think some of them were obviously cheap, like the piano just going or flying at you and all that kind of shit.
I think that's where
when
the game
it messed with you,
really strong. When it started with the when it was strong in the horror, but when it started with the psychological stuff, that was where. So like, we've spoken about that room with the checkers at the end, and then there's the part where you're sort of climbing up your office, up the bookcases. So like you go into a room and then you come out and you've got to like creep along the bookcases, input the number for the phone, and then you go up a bit more. That sort of stuff didn't land with me quite so much as the horror aspect of it, but by that point I was pretty hooked on what was going on in the house and the story and what had happened. So that kind of.
It's kind of like the pacing of the game would be better if half of the end or the second half was more interspersed with the first half, rather than top load it with atmospheric psychological jump scares and then end load it with puzzling, because there was a lot of puzzling towards the end. There's like lots of reading numbers, ringing phones, the bit you say that you're climbing, the thing with that fucking horrible picture of the like hairy baby
the hairy baby face. I found the
that's
review
a real
of
painting,
that.
by the
Is
way.
it? Or is it? Okay, because
Yeah.
I found the review really funny. I can't really fully remember what it was though, but it's just like
they were basically saying like
basically like
we shouldn't be too harsh on it,
Yeah.
and we shouldn't be too harsh on the guy because he's gone through a lot in his life and he's got a lot of recent trauma. But if we said that this was acceptable, it's like doing him a disservice to even say that it's an acceptable thing. But yeah, it's a real painting. And then he's holding up his little picture with the numbers on it. There's one way you have to play a Ouija board. Did you figure that out?
Nah, I started.
I couldn't find the last 3 numbers, and then I walked out the door thinking it's in the next room. And it fucking locked behind me.
The exact same thing happened to me. I found it, poked about at it for a bit, and I was like, "Oh no, this is a puzzle." So I went away and then found some numbers. Went back, input the numbers. Was like, "Oh no, it needs way more." And then I went
he's
to
like
go
last
look for
3.
them. I went to go look for them, and then it shut me out, so I never went back.
Yeah, it's really annoying that. Well, it's not annoying, I guess. It's not long enough for it to be annoying because you can just play it again and try and get a different ending or whatever.
Yeah, I got through that. Because we had spoken about
smashed
that.
it.
Yeah, because we had spoken about because I had been playing the wrong version, obviously, and right, well, I need to get through this, and you're like, "Can you get through it?" I was like, "Yeah," and I'd like,
I was really worried for a minute. Like, I don't want him to be forcing himself to play this like Tuesday night when he's having his dinner.
Nah, I'd
get through it. He did it so quick.
I'd written a sort of on my to-do list for the day, which is here. I'd written like on the Monday and the Tuesday, or like yesterday and today, I'd written like Layers of Fear 1 to 3, because obviously you can tell sort of how far you are through the game by the cabinet doors in the paint room. I was like, right, if I get through 1 to 3 on Monday, then I can do 3 to 6 or like 4 to 6 on Tuesday, and then that's fine. And I got through 1 to 3 so fast. I was like, oh, I'll just do a bit more to sort of get myself ahead of the game, and I was just finished. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it just feeds back into what you've said recently as well about like if these kind of games are too long, like Alien Isolation, they're just exhausting. Like I could not stay in that mindset for much longer. Yeah, sorry, I know we weren't wanting to bring that one up all October again. But if that whole game had felt like that and was double that length, I can't stay on edge that for too long. I've got fucking high cholesterol.
Exactly. No, we spoke about this over text. But for the benefit of the listeners, like, I'm a big proponent of, like, actually, it's not even just me. It is just filmmaking in general. If you look around, like, you get drama, or you get action movies, or you get like the big bombastic set pieces, and those are the ones that will be like 2.5, 3 hours these days. If you look at comedy and horror, they're usually, for the most part, in and out in 90 minutes, and there's a reason for that, and it's pacing. Like, you can only expect the viewer to take tension so much, and then it becomes exhausting. It's sort of like, it sort of peaks. You need to get in and out, and sort of, so you can get in, ratchet the tension up, maximize your impact, and then get out before you go over the hill and it starts becoming exhausting. And I think that's why the best horror games that are purely horror games, so like Dead Space is different because that's a horror action game. Resident Evil would fall into the same category as that as well. Like, games like this that are pure horror, they're operating on tension to me on a different level, and they need to almost treat themselves like movies. You need to get in, ratchet your tension up, you need to find some sort of release valve at some point, and then peak, and then get out of there, which means the games should be short. A game like this, I wouldn't want it to be more than like 5 hours, 3 to 5 hours.
Totally agree with that. It's just the right length.
Yes, it is. It's spot on. Really good. Like you say, there's a couple issues which I suppose we'll definitely come to, but for the most part, big fan of this game. And it's nice, and I have a lot of time for games like this. I wouldn't want that to be like my entire game playing experience, but a couple a year. There's the Dark Pictures anthology, which I slowly like to dig through and stream myself playing. Massive fan of those, but again, in and out jobs, get in and out as like a palate cleanser, and then move on to something else. And this is the perfect time of year to play that. And this is a really good version of that. It gave me quite big Gone Home vibes. Don't know about you.
I can see that. I got a lot of PT off of it.
Yeah.
Certainly, just like the walking and the way that everything's changing around you.
The
as you're
looping, yeah.
sort of
That's
looping.
like, PT is a great analogy for that.
If anything, this game just made me really like even more disappointed in the medium than we already were, because they're so much better than that.
Yeah. I think like was Bloober. Was the medium the first Bloober Team?
Well, it might have been.
I think it was maybe the first one that I'm aware of playing. And I came away because I remember going into it, hearing a lot of chat about this is like the development house that people want to give Silent Hill to and how good they are.
Yeah.
And I played it and I was just like, really? But yeah, now I see it, I guess, a bit more with this.
Oh no, they made loads before Layers of Fear.
Is there anything we would have played?
No. Loads of DS stuff.
DS stuff? Anything worth us digging into?
Hospital Havoc.
Oh my god.
Double Bloob. The fuck? Amen. Lots of puzzle games, basically.
Weird.
Basement Crawl.
I love it when a development
Observer.
team just
I recognise
goes,
that.
"Oh, I reckon that's a horror game." Observer, isn't it?
Is that the one where you're like the like almost like not a debt collector, but something like that? You have to like knock on people's doors and like look through their door.
You could be right. I can.
Oh, they did the Blair Witch game as well.
What did they? Okay.
But yeah, Silent Hill 2 remake is them. From the logo of Bloober Team, it often makes me think that they're, especially on the original Layers of Fear, kind of makes me think that they meant the O's in Bloober Team to look like tits. Because they've got like nipples on the O's, and I was like, really? Is this like a joke on the word boobs?
Bloober Team. It might be.
Yeah.
I do quite like that when a development house goes and like jumps genre and does it really well. It's really quite fun. So they've gone from like party puzzle games to serious horror and nailed it. The other one is the Killzone developer goes from Killzone to Horizon, which is obviously a complete switcheroo. Oh, and the obvious one is Naughty Dog from Crash Bandicoot to Uncharted.
Yeah, so that Observer game is the one where you're like a detective and you hack people's brains. And that got runner-up for Giant Bomb's 2017 Game of the Year awards. So maybe that's something worth checking out one day.
Yes, add that to.
It's not a horror game, but
I'll add that to my list. The other one that I've always wanted to get to that I've never made. Well, it's a horror game. I think it's a horror game. Soma. I've never played that.
Yeah, that's been on my list for sort of ideas for the future as well. I found quite a lot of cool like indie ones for when we were setting up the draft that we're looking to do.
Oh, nice.
Like, and I was running out of stuff, and I put like indie horror games. I was like, I don't really have many, so I tried to look at loads, and I found like loads of cool sounding indie horror games that we can probably try out at some point.
Sweet.
But anyway, let's go for it, right? Let's jump in.
Time to go.
So, as we've been alluding to, developed by Bloober Team, Layers of Fear, initially released on the 16th of Feb 2016 for Linux, Windows, Mac, PS4, and Xbox One. And then 2 years later, on the 21st of Feb 2018, came to Switch, which the Wikipedia entry will tell you is the definitive version. It is garbage. It plays like shit. It looks like shit.
Oh yeah, you bought
it.
It's
not as bad docked, but I spent money on that based off that. And weirdly, I already owned Layers of Fear on PC, and David and I share our Steam library, and I don't think you've bought it, and I don't remember buying it. And then when I was Googling, like doing some research, somewhere along the line I saw it say Layers of Fear 2016 is currently free on something. And I think I maybe got this for free on one of those like Humble Bundle style things, and don't remember doing it because I never remember consciously buying this. But yeah, having already owned it for nothing, I paid 18 quid for the Switch version and fucking hated it because it's 30 FPS and it looks disgusting. And the loading times are unacceptable. I will, however, play the DLC on that version because I'm not paying for that.
Nah.
That's where you play the artist's daughter coming back to the house.
Okay. Yeah, I got really confused for it because I'm looking at my Steam library just now. When I look at it, it says from the library of Super Thrillix, and I remember going on to play it yesterday, and it said you were playing it. And I was like, oh well, I can't play it then. And I was going to text you and say when you come off, let me know so I can jump on and play it. But then I clicked like to purchase. It was like to purchase, and then let me click on it. So I clicked to purchase to see how much it was. Because like, if it's like a $5, I'll just buy it. But then I clicked to purchase, and it just let me play it. And I'm sure I very much doubt that you just sort of turned the game off just as I did that. Because I
texted you to say I'm done, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm done as well." So
yeah, we must have been playing at the same time. Yeah, and
because that would make sense. Because I mean, I can only share my Steam library with one person, so why not let that person play the game as well? What's the problem?
Yeah, I know you can't. I don't think you can. Well, that's the thing that's confused me is I'm sure I've seen somewhere you can't do that, and I know that like they've based the reason they wouldn't do that is like multiplayer games. They wouldn't want one person to buy it and then both people just to be able to play against each other.
I guess so, yeah.
I don't
really
know.
odd that it let you do that.
But it let me play.
Nice little hack though.
Because it let me boot the game up and I was like, I'm going to get a text from Alex saying that I've kicked him off, but I never did. So I was like, oh well,
no,
I'll just keep going.
Yeah. Weird. Oh well, nice one. Speaking of Steam, that's the only place I could find sales figures. It's apparently sold 2.4 million units on Steam, which is quite good, unless all of those were the ones getting it for free.
Yeah, no, that's great for a game like this. I think that's pretty good because, like, this is part of the
considering
reason
it's also on Mac and PS4 and Xbox One and Switch, so it's probably sold way more than that.
This is part of the reason that games like Resident Evil went mental, right? Because like notoriously horror games don't sell well, and I reckon for the budget that they must have had, this has been pretty profitable for them. So that's good.
Well, yeah, they've gone from strength to strength, I guess, in terms of what they've started to put out.
Yeah,
not necessarily how good the games are, but they've obviously gone higher and higher scale of what they're trying to achieve. So right, the plot. There's a guy, I think there's a YouTube channel called Gaming Harry. He did like a really good explanation of everything that's going on.
Brilliant.
So I've taken a lot of what he said to try and like regurgitate it for this. To try and just, I think you're going to like the game more once I go through this, because I found that I really liked it more once I figured out like all the shit that's going on. The basic plot, really, there is not much to it other than like you are an artist who is obviously going through some level of madness, who returns to his home to create this magnum opus painting. So he's needing to find these 6, as David sort of alluded to earlier, these 6 items to help create this magnum opus painting. But things quickly devolve into a very haunting and sinister scenario where more and more things just mess with him as he's trying to do it. There's not much more to the actual goings on of the game than that, because all the plot really has happened before now. Do you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, you are of course haunted as you're going along by the ghost of his wife.
Yes.
And how you react to that ghost will affect the way that the game ends, which I will talk about later on. The protagonist apparently takes inspiration from like Dorian Gray, the story of...
They leave that book around a lot.
They do leave that book around a lot, yeah, exactly. And there's a quote from Dorian Gray right at the beginning of the game on the very first loading screen. Either from Dorian Gray or about Dorian Gray. I can't really remember. No, it's from Dorian Gray, isn't it? Yeah. Which is the story of what? Is that a guy who's like... something like he's got like a painting in his loft, and every time he does something bad in real life, that the bad shit happens to his...
Yeah, he's a guy that is like really good looking, really wealthy, really successful, and he's not aging. Yeah. And he's got a painting in his attic that is basically taking all the hits from his drinking and his adultery and stuff like that. So it's almost like his real face.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I was gonna add that the book's around the house, but you've already. I didn't even actually find that book ever.
Oh, it's
So
everywhere. It's on the floor. It's just scattered around. Like let's assume that like in that time period they had sold like 50,000 copies. I reckon that artist is responsible for a good 30,000 of those copies just sitting around his house.
Putting the author's kids through college.
Yeah.
So apparently the year of the game is after 1925, but around that time, because there's a newspaper cutting at some point, and there's a story to the side of what it wants you to read that's talking about the peace treaty that was signed between the USA and West Germany, which was done in like 1925. So it's if that's supposed to be like recent news, then we're talking just after that.
So I assume I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead and ruining parts.
No. Otherwise, I'll talk for hours about the plot.
He lost his leg during the war.
That's what people seem to think. There's a drawer that has some war medals in it. There's also apparently though a note somewhere that said he was excused from PE as a child.
Okay. So he may have been.
I don't see how you're going to go join the army if if you had a prosthetic leg by that point. I don't see how you'd get allowed in the army. So
my
it must have been
was
something that happened in the war.
One thing, because it's one. I'll get to what I really enjoyed in a minute, but yeah, that's one thing. There's several references to prosthetic leg. There's quite a funny reference where they sent him a prosthetic leg that was the wrong size.
Yeah, well, and you can see that he's limping as you're controlling the game.
Well, that was what I really liked. I realized at some point that he's walking, and they move the camera in such a way that it's clear that he's walking like to the point that they must have actually attached like a GoPro to someone that has a prosthetic leg of that type and made them walk around, because it just felt really like the gait was amazingly well.
Yeah, it's really disorienting at first because obviously no game protagonist really walks like that.
It explains why you can't sprint
somewhere
as well.
He walks with a cane, but I don't think I noticed that he had a cane.
You do find a cane.
If you find it, right? Okay, yeah. I was gonna say I definitely didn't feel like he had the cane on him at the time because he's got both his hands there.
Yes,
I don't think he was doing that. But yeah, really like interesting choice of how to just adds that little. Do you remember when we? Oh no, you weren't in the class at uni when we had to bring in films to like discuss for one of Jack Keenan's classes. I took in like Evil Dead 2, and he was going on about like, the camera angles that he uses to kind of just slightly subvert from a normal. I don't even know what you would say camera angle is. 0 degrees angle, I guess. To like put it at like 20 degrees just to make everything look a bit more fucked up. It kind of feels like that's what they were going for here, to just have every step be that slight bit off of 0 degrees or whatever.
It works on multiple levels. Like it's
literally.
It throws you off. It's a good way of a plot device to understand like this guy's got demons, he's experienced stuff, he's seen stuff, he's gone through things that would clearly damage people and make them. You wouldn't be surprised if they needed help or resorted to things like alcoholism, which I'm sure we'll get to. But also like you're right, the camera throws you off slightly, and but then it also works in a gameplay perspective. Like I said, it explains why the character can't jump and sprint around the level like you would expect a video game to be able to let you do. It forces you to maneuver yourself about like someone that has that disability, and I found it really effective and well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the button actually is called like fast walk, isn't it? That's all you can do. Is that. Obviously, from the state of the house, you can tell that at one stage he was obviously a very talented artist. There's some newspaper clippings about how, him being really, really good. There's a letter from his agent you can find somewhere that sort of goes on about how his phone is like ringing off the hook for commissions for him, and he's married. His wife is a musician, apparently, again, very talented. There's another newspaper clipping about her. You also see later on, like she was like his muse. There's you can pick up like some sheet music next to a piano.
They went into business. They did an exhibition of some sort together, it seems like, where she played music. They played her music while he had an art exhibition, if that makes.
Yeah, and there's obviously the painting of her playing, and it seems as if there's a voice note somewhere as well where he's like asking her to keep playing while he's trying to paint something at home because like that's inspiring him. He obviously asked her to play music while he was painting. So I guess they were like, must have felt as if they were a really good match for each other, that early stage of their marriage where they're both like young, attractive, talented artists of different kinds. There's lots of mentions about her being beautiful and really pretty at the beginning of the game when she's at exhibitions with him and playing piano and stuff, which obviously becomes very important later on to him anyway. We obviously know that they get married as well because there's like save the date leaf, like little invitations. There's like an engagement ring. As you go throughout the game, you obviously find, if you hear whispering as you're walking around, you can go and pick up things nearby that will give you these, what I think they're called whispered memories of like
okay. I never
parts of the
that.
past that it's like associated with those items. And apparently the way that the game ends, like if you pick up items that are more related to the artist himself or rats, you'll get this sort of selfish ending, and if you pick up items related to the daughter and the wife, you'll get the family ending. And apparently they're slightly color coded. They're more of like greenish blue for the family and red for him. I didn't notice that because I was looking at guides thinking, how the hell am I supposed to know what one for me and what one isn't before I pick it up? But I guess again, replays or sorting out the color coding, I guess, or figuring out the color coding. Back to the leg thing, there's obviously notes as well about how he struggles to sleep. There's one note where he says about his legs playing up. Yeah, and he's just going to get up and do some work. So clearly, you know, we're starting off on a footing there of the guy's sleep deprived and has a lot of pain going on. So there's your first couple of punches to the gut. Then he gets obsessed with this rat infestation in the house, or at least what he perceives to be a rat infestation.
I mean, do they explain this? Because they talk. So my memory of this is that you obviously see a lot of rats throughout the game.
Yeah, they're there, definitely there now. Well, either they are there now, or he still thinks they are.
There's that cupboard you go into at the start of the game where you walk in and you can find the business card of the rat catcher. And then if you walk into the cupboard further, you set all the rat traps off, and they all start clicking and stuff like that. And then there's later on in the game, the guy's like, "There are no rats. Stop getting in touch with their company."
Because apparently he insulted the guy's mother. I was like, he said like, don't say that stuff about my mother. But yeah, the pest control guys are basically telling him to just leave them alone, or they're going to get lawyers involved because there's none. Because there's rat poison as well in the bathroom upstairs in the cupboard. I think there's like a bottle of rat poison. So, I don't know if those rats are real or not, but they definitely appear to be real. Because if you follow the rats, apparently, that helps you get this like selfish ending as well.
Selfish
if you go
ending,
the opposite way, then you don't, I guess. There are also loads of letters to sort of indicate, you know, that he is short-tempered, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. Like he's, you know, started shouting at his wife, obviously not getting enough sleep. She says something about him having to go to sleep as well as him saying he couldn't do it. She keeps saying like, oh, even Rembrandt or whatever had to go for a kip at the end of the day. And then you find more stuff to do with him going slightly insane, like the commissioned illustrations for a Little Red Riding Hood book where he's drawn like,
great picture, by the way. Yeah,
badass heavy metal like wolf just ripping Little Red Riding Hood's head off. And then we sort of see as well that he's got an alcohol problem. The workshop that you get into has two massive cases full of like empty bottles, and there's bottles of stuff everywhere. There's more stuff from his wife as well, like notes where he says at one point something like he's going to make something up to her, and then she's obviously written "you promised" underneath that he obviously didn't do it. She says that she's sick of talking to him just through notes, so they're obviously not even really talking to each other that much. There's a letter from the neighbors talking about them like having really loud arguments at night time and they couldn't sleep either. There's a pamphlet for couples counseling. There's obviously like big issues in the marriage, and it's revealed from a newspaper cutting somewhere that there was a fire in a department store that severely injured like a dozen people, and his wife was one of those people. she's obviously really badly burned by that fire, and you can see letters.
I thought it was in the house. Right, okay, I didn't pick up that bit.
There was a fire that she set off in the house. Well, that is what seems to be like the
So she's trying to kill him.
Law. She was trying to. So this is like sort of jumping ahead. So if I repeat myself later, sorry about that. But there's like he did the painting of her in black, which is like the lady called The Lady in Black.
Okay.
Which was one of his like biggest, like best works, and it's obviously what it's like a tribute to his wife. And the overall point of him trying to do this magnum opus, if you get the neutral sort of looping ending, is he's trying to paint that picture of his wife again,
that's what I
of
got.
how she looked before she got burnt in the fire. But then the end of the game, obviously that painting melts, and then you see how she kind of must have looked after she recovered from the fire, and then it turns into like a rotting corpse or whatever. But apparently the thought process is that she burnt his works because he was so obsessed with this painting of the painting again of how she used to look, that she obviously just got fed up of him being obsessed with redoing it or whatever.
Right, okay.
Or being obsessed with her before she got burnt, that she burns all his paintings. But there is another note somewhere, like one of these rat notes, where he's going on about how the rats are all climbing over all the canvases, and that the only way to get rid of them is fire. So maybe he burnt them, but blames her for it.
Yeah, so in my ending, he takes the picture of his wife into another room and goes, "Oh, I know what to do now," and then chucks it on the ground. And it's just surrounded by other paintings that looked exactly the same.
Yeah.
And then they catch fire somehow and all burn, and he burns as well and dies, I assume.
No, he only burns and dies in the family one.
Okay.
Do they burn in that one? Is it just, maybe he just like imagines it, because you kind of like wake up in the workshop again, don't you? And then you can go read like a note from him sort of apologizing to his wife and saying, "I'm really sorry for everything I put you through. You'll never read this." And then you pull down the thing on the canvas and it's blank, and you basically start all over again, like a never ending cycle. So that is the worst ending that you don't want to get. So yeah, and then you get a letter as well that he's been sending to a doctor. Apparently he's been like sending them hateful letters and threats that they can't give his wife better treatment. And there's another one that says apparently he's asked like 16 different doctors for like second opinions. Then they say that like her burns were so severe that they can't fix it.
About her at some
he
point.
Says she has a freakish grin now. And the doctor even says like some people would really find that harmful if you said that to them. And he says that your wife's obviously suffering a lot of trauma and stress from all of this, and you can't fix her through surgery. You need to get her actual help. And his agent even says that as well, because he obviously there's a letter from his agent that he's clearly told the agent, "Oh, she burnt all my paintings." And then the guy's like, "What the fuck? Even the Lady in Black, that was your tribute to her. Why the hell did she do that?" So again, I assume that's what she did because she was sick of him neglecting his family, being an alcoholic, obsessed with how she used to look. But there is that thing about the rats that makes me think maybe he just did that and then blamed her because he's just gone nuts himself. I don't quite know what I believe.
Yeah, it gets a bit funny as well because there's the notes that you find later on as well. It seems to be written by his wife, and she's like, "I wish she would just like fall asleep drunk and not wake up again."
Yeah.
And she's talking about God. She's like, it's not about fear of actually killing him, but I don't know. It's unclear what's stopping her, but she's just like, I wish. Like she talks about killing him, basically.
Yeah. So, because there's a note there somewhere that says that it took her 6 months to be able to hold the pen again, and all of her writing is really like shitty and scrawled.
Right, okay.
I think the implication there is I'm too weak to kill this guy. I can barely like hold a pen. She says something like it's like something like it's not my resolve that stays my hand. Or steadies my hand. She just physically doesn't think she could kill the guy. She wishes she could because he's become such a piece of shit.
Got you.
Because I don't know whether he got her any help, but he definitely tries to, because there's like a sort of a questionnaire that he wrote about her later on where he's talking about her like being really passive aggressive now and really clumsy from the accident, and Yeah, so I saw that the video I watched, the guy seemed to think that was him that it was written about, but I think it's definitely him writing that about his wife because he's suddenly like, why is she being angry with me all the time? And she can't write, so the writing's too good for it to be her.
Yeah, good
I
point.
think it's
Yeah.
I think that's definitely him talking about, because there's a thing at the bottom where as well where it says like suicidal tendencies and he's done like question marks and exclamation marks. And obviously she then does commit suicide. You go into the bathroom, you pick up a knife, like a kitchen knife covered in blood, and you can hear like a voice sort of memory being played of him like trying to get into the bathroom saying, I need to go to the toilet, what the hell are you doing? Open the door. And then he starts sort of saying, no, oh God, no. So she obviously kills herself in there, and then that's referenced later on, you know, in these tragedy things that the papers are all talking about where he's doing this horrible painting of the baby face monster or whatever it is, and his agents say none of your paintings are selling that well anymore. So he's, you know, obviously lost it and he's drunk off his ass. He'd obviously apparently been neglecting his daughter as well. Before his wife killed herself, she does write a note saying goodbye to the daughter later on, and she also has a go at him in a letter saying like she's got too many dolls in her room and you can't just keep buying her toys instead of actually being a father to her. Like she needs an actual dad. You're just like spending all this money on her. Yeah, so there's the bit where the wife says goodbye. It says goodbye to the daughter, wishes she killed herself. Blah blah. So the wife kills herself. After the wife has killed herself, you also see a letter that explains that his daughter got taken by social services away from him. That is strongly implied when you find a whiskey bottle later on that he probably hit her or hurt her in some way. He says something about this is daddy's medicine when talking about a bottle of whiskey. Then he says, don't touch that. And then immediately after he's like profusely apologizing and begging for forgiveness.
There's a few instances of like a doll or a baby hitting its head. So like there's the bit in the cot where like you turn around and the baby's just standing.
God, that was fucking horrible.
Yeah. And then there's another bit, I can't remember if it was the new version of the game or not, but you're walking down a corridor and there's a baby kneeling at the end of the corridor just smashing its head off the ground. So I wonder if you just hit it.
There's definite like implication that he's abused his daughter in some way. Probably through, you know, because he's an alcoholic. And there's also, it seems to be showing you that he killed the dog that they had as well, because there's quite a few clips of him like complaining and shouting at the dog. There's in the I think it's in the daughter's room, there's a painting of the dog that kind of melts and the dog's like screeching.
Yeah.
And there's in the Inheritance DLC, there's a painting somewhere that the daughter's clearly drawn of him like holding the dog over the fucking stove.
Jesus.
So I think he did kill the dog.
Did you see Did you see that he was like marking the baby's artwork? Did you see that?
No, I don't know if I did see that. Maybe.
There's like pictures, you go and you pick up pictures in the kid's bedroom and he's written like, what the hell is this?
Oh like, yeah. Oh, so yeah, he must have just been like really like emotionally and physically abusive to this kid. Yeah. Yeah, because apparently then he reckons that his wife is writing all over his paintings on the back, like all this scathing, hateful shit about all of his art, and then he's like, "Oh, but I agree with every word." So again, is that him? Just
it could
like,
be. Yeah, there's a bit where there's like they've got a bunch of paintings in a room, and the paintings fall over forward, and on the back is just covered in like pictures of rats. So like maybe there's something in that to that, and the rats are representing that side of him.
Yeah. Also with the daughter as well, apparently, did you see the newspaper clipping where like basically he broke into the care home she'd been taken to and kidnapped her?
No.
Yeah, so apparently then the police were like concerned that he was going to hurt the kid, so they like break into his house. They stormed his property apparently and took the kid back out, and he was as he was being arrested, apparently he like falls to his knees and says, "Please, she's all I have left," and all this kind of stuff. And it seems to be really public knowledge because there's lots of newspaper cuttings when talking about how shit his paintings are, where everybody reporting on the guy seems to know. He's obviously famous enough that people know that he's lost his wife and he's lost his daughter, and he's just like painting absolute shit. but the main, as I said earlier on, like the main arc of the story is you painting this like magnum opus, and you're going around trying to find these things that will help him paint it, and they're all pretty fucked up. It's like some flayed skin, a vial of blood, it's a bone that's been ground to dust, human hair for a brush, a finger, and an eye that he wants to like witness the artistic process. The game, from what I saw, and I do agree with, like the game sort of implies that that's pieces of his wife that he's
Oh, right,
using.
okay.
Because if it was him, well, seems to have two eyes, and he's definitely not missing any fingers. So I would assume that is from his wife. And another thing that seems to suggest that is when you go into the kitchen, I'm pretty sure it's during the game, but it's definitely at the end of the game when you can like walk around the house freely before you go look at the canvas and it cuts to the credits. In the kitchen, I think, is that there's a door and you open it and it's just like a brick wall, like the room has been bricked over. And there's a shopping list in the kitchen. And it says it's got like 50 air fresheners on it. And that bricked in wall. Yeah, the bricked in wall is covered in the air fresheners, like the little like pine tree things. So
I do remember looking at that thinking it was odd because it was like car air fresheners and this is this is weird.
Yeah, that's right. So seems to be that's where his wife is, that he's kept his, because there's no like obituaries, there's no paper cuttings to say that his wife was buried anywhere or mentioning that.
Bricked her up.
It seems as if he's put his wife in the house and bricked her up and keeps buying air fresheners because it stinks. And when you do the Inheritance DLC where you play as the daughter going back to the house after the artist himself is dead, she walks in the kitchen and says, "Oh, it reeks in here." And you can go to that door and the bricked-in wall has got a hole in it. And you can go in there. The corpse isn't in there, but there's like a stain on the floor. But that's also where the painting of the dog is being killed. So that's the only thing where I question, was that his wife behind the bricked-up wall, or was it the dog? Or was it both? Maybe he just chucked them all in there and bricked it up and whatever. But that's what I agree with being the thing that's going on, where the wife is in the house the whole time, which is probably why that ghost is there in inverted commas, because her body is still there. He's just bricked it up and buying air fresheners to stop it from being so fucking horrible to smell. But yeah, then the endings, once you've done these paintings, are, as we suggested earlier, you could get the neutral ending, which is where you don't really go any way or the other, and he draws a picture of his wife. She's in black. It then kind of melts. She looks like she would do, I guess, with scars after the fire. Then it turns into like a rotting corpse and sort of laughs at him and mocks him, and he pushes it over and then chucks it in a room, as David said, with pictures of just all the same painting that he's just tried to do over and over again. Then, of course, the game suggests that you just loop that over and over again. You've got two other endings after that where the selfish ending, which is, as I said earlier, if you go pick up all the items belonging, like relating to him, or you follow the rats. You also have to apparently avoid the ghost of his wife as often as you can when you have the choice to. Did you see the bit where, you would have seen it, in the bit where the game, you're walking through a wall and above it says "Don't look back"? Did you look back or did you carry on going? Or do you not remember that?
Don't remember that. I must have kept on going.
Maybe you didn't notice the thing and just walked through the door without seeing it. If you turn around, she's fucking right there in your face. Oh my god. But apparently there are some moments where, like, if she's in the distance, like, and you don't walk towards her, there are apparently times where she like falls down to her knees or something and starts crying, and you can actually go over to her to help her up, and she thanks you for it. I didn't see anything. So
that was one thing I didn't. So in the game, I sort of realised that if I got quote unquote killed by my wife, that I would just sort of wake up and it would just let me continue. So at some point in the game, every time I saw the ghost of my wife or whatever, I just used to run at it. But then I got confused because I was looking up the endings and it said if you go over to your wife and hug her, that's how you get the good ending. And I was like, well, I was running at her, but I don't remember hugging her at any point.
Yeah, maybe it is that part. I don't know which one it is. It must be if you just stand and look at her or something. You have to just wait.
There's
But I think you'd
also
still get that. You'd still get that ending. I think if you just run at her. But I think you obviously missed one because you didn't turn around.
right, because there's also that bit in the where you stick your head in the bath as well,
Yeah,
and then you have to hold your head underwater as you approach her,
yeah.
and then I don't know. I didn't really understand about the hugging part because, like I said, I was running at her and engaging with her all the time.
Yeah,
But
that's
I don't
where
remember a hug happening.
I think once you learn that like interactions with the ghost of the wife are what dictate the ending, it felt too much of like a game mechanic for me to then be scared of her anymore. It's kind of like, well,
There she is.
and also I knew that it's just going to apparently carry on the game, so I was just like, well, I don't have to replay anything. So without knowing that's what I was actually affecting, I was just like, yeah, whatever, go for it, come and get me. I don't care. I don't get game overed, so fuck it.
Whereas
But obviously, if you do that enough, is it definitely her that you can fight off?
I guess I haven't played enough of it to be able to say for sure, but it certainly seems that way. It certainly seems to cross over with the interaction you have with your wife in the 2016 version. You've got this lantern, and you shine it at her. She's like following you, and if you shine it at her, she like melts into the ground, but she'll come back. And that's where the fear was coming from me, because there's a part of the game where you've got to run around the house and you've got to pick up different things to get the notes for this code that you've got to enter into a padlocked door, and she's following you and it loops. And you've got to like shine it on her, make her melt, and then you've got to run into this room that's a dead end, get what you need and get out. And that was stressing the life out of me having to do that.
I suppose you kind of know you have to then go back the way you've
got
come.
to go back the way you come, knowing she's coming, and
yeah.
holding your lantern up like runs out. So like when you kill her, you've got no lantern for a set period of time until it recharges itself.
I wonder if that's a Layers of Fear 2 mechanic then that's been put into the game, or whether it's part of the new content.
Yeah.
But I although having said that, I'm not as scared because I know that the wife's not going to do anything. I think I'd rather it was how it was than have to like fight her off.
Yeah, that is where like
far too video gamey than what this
seems
originally
to be
going for.
It felt video gamey, in a way that the first one doesn't.
Yeah. So if you do go towards the wife, and there's other things as well, like I said, like picking up the right sort of stuff. That's when the painting that he paints at the end is actually one of his daughter and his wife together. He then of course he realizes how bad he's been and how bad his behavior is. It's impossible for him to bring them back, and that's when he goes to the room of all the paintings and sets them all on fire, and then just sort of lies down in the fire to let himself be consumed. And then the alternative to that is where you avoid the wife as much as you can, pick up all the stuff to do with yourself, or follow the rats to the Rat Queen. End is one of the names for the ending. That's when he paints a picture of just himself and goes and hangs it up nicely on his wall, and then you get this sort of pan out time pass thing where it's then hung up in a museum. So clearly that's the selfish ending where he moves past his trauma and his madness back to some level of fame and profligacy. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Being prolific. And I was tempted, or at least I am tempted, I guess, in another time to try and go through and get these endings. But then I did just watch them on YouTube and thought, I think I'm happy.
Yeah, I feel like I gathered enough of this story that I feel satisfied, and then going and watching the other endings, I kind of understand where I had to. Like, I don't feel like based on what you said more so than what I watched. Like, I didn't feel like I'd missed too much. I didn't see that, other than having watched the endings, I didn't see what going back and replaying them would.
It's really just to get to that stage, isn't it? Yeah.
Unless I was a sort of, if in my achievement hunting days, maybe I would have gone back and done it. But like I was really engaged in the story, and I'm satisfied with the ending I got.
I was definitely not satisfied that I just got what seems to be the one that you get when you don't know how to get a proper ending. But
I think you're right there.
Yeah, but I don't know how you stumble across that. Like, how would you know to?
You don't. That's the thing.
To avoid the
That's
wife
the
is
thing
one
that
thing, I
feels
guess, if you're
gamey.
trying to run away. Yeah. But if to like try and pick up specific things that only relate to her and your daughter, I don't know if it's like, you must 100% get your items and 0% theirs. I don't think it's quite as binary as that. But it is like you have to sort of get like a significant amount more of one thing than the other to get one type of ending.
Mm-hmm.
But I obviously just got enough of each and avoided her enough and died enough that I just got the neutral one where he does just go mad and continually doesn't do the painting. Which is definitely that ending is definitely in keeping with how bleak and
It felt like it
oppressive the
fit.
game is.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
I
macabre
don't
game.
feel like an uplifting, happy ending, redemption arc necessarily fitted with the way the game went.
I suppose there's they kind of put like a morality spin on it where like the quote unquote good ending is the one where you paint your wife and daughter and feel bad about what you've done to them, but then he burns himself to death as a result of his guilt. Or you get over all of it and just become a loner who paints pictures of himself for a living. So you console yourself with the fact that he doesn't care about his wife and kid dying anymore, and he's now great at painting again. So
Yeah.
there is no real good ending, I suppose.
No.
It's all shades of grey, which is, I like that. But I like most of this.
Yeah.
But that's the story. That's the plot. That seems to be like the explanation of what the game's all about.
Do you know what the significance of the checkers are in that section?
Oh no, I don't actually. I didn't see anything written about that. That other than it just being really dull.
It was really dull, and
it took me. That's just my head.
It took me far too much longer than I'm comfortable admitting to realise that I had to go looking for checkers. Like I was just walking around thinking, "What am I doing in this section?"
Yeah,
and then eventually,
and they're so like weirdly scattered about that it's like one up half a flight of stairs and one. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what they do at the end of 2023 instead of that, or whether it just straight up cuts back to something else. I don't know.
I'm interested.
I'm quite interested to play that game now.
It's not terrible, and I was enjoying it. It was just the idea that like obviously we've got other games to move on to, whereas like Layers of Fear 2016 is like a 3-hour experience, whereas we spoke about pacing before, and from what I can tell, this game, the pacing in the remake is no different. The remake's like upwards of 10 to 12 hours, and that is an investment of time that type of game just is too much. It's too much for me. But like, from what I have played of it, I really did enjoy it. I'm not sure. When I stopped playing to go and play the 2016 version, I wasn't bored. I was enjoying myself. It was great, really good. It's different in many key ways, some good, some bad. In terms of like we spoke about atmosphere, I think it's worse. In terms of actual engagement and sort of being a bit more, whether this is good or bad, it's up to the player, I guess, but being a bit more obvious with what it's telling you. It's much less. There's much less room for interpretation. I did read, but didn't see that the end of the 2023 version is it's an open-ended finish, much like the old version. But how that manifests itself, I haven't had a look yet.
Interesting.
But it's not a bad game. It's perfectly fun.
Does it seem? I don't know if it seems. I guess you'd have to play 1 and 2 to then know if it's actually had been worth them making.
To know what they've really done. Yeah.
Yeah, and like what the point of it. I mean, obviously they've moved it to a new engine. Maybe this was just like we're gonna experiment on Unreal Engine 5 now. So here's us putting our best game together and just seeing how we can do it.
It's interesting.
Because why do it otherwise?
I was reading about this is how sort of like Steam and Reddit and other places. So this may or may not be true, but they describe in the remake. They describe the writer, the IUR at the very beginning in the Lighthouse.
Oh yeah,
as being the main character of the 2023 version of the game, but she's not in the OG version at all. So
I wonder. Yeah,
it's quite a significant change. But I did notice, whether it was deliberate or not, I did notice that as you were walking around the house in the 2023 version, listening to the voice notes and reading letters and things like that, I'm sure the voice actor of the author was constantly there, which makes me wonder if the story within the 2016 and 2023 version of The Guy in the House was the story that the lady wrote in The Lighthouse.
Yeah, maybe. Which, well, yeah, it's based on the story of Dorian Gray, kinda. So
yeah,
yeah,
is the insinuation that the story she writes while she's in this scary haunted lighthouse, this story that you're uncovering, perhaps?
yeah, maybe. You don't know how they've put 1 and 2 in it. I guess because you've got different chapters, haven't you? The artist part, I guess, is seemingly the painter part. Sorry, is seemingly like the 2016 version plus
Really
the
based,
lantern
really
shit.
similar plus lantern. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like the
and
layout of the
then
house
the
is
2
exactly
stuff
the
is
same. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's just it's like they've switched up some of the puzzles and changed it and made it more interactive and more video gamey than the original version was.
Yeah, it's really odd that he's actually seeing his hand like pick stuff up, and he's like every note is voiced now.
They also did say that and I did notice this myself, is that I think some of the playtesting or some of the feedback they maybe got from the 2016 version was there was a lot of, because obviously it's Unity, you can interact with everything. So there's like stuff you can open up all the doors in the kitchen. Sometimes there's stuff in there.
I found myself doing that
not.
so much.
Yeah,
but it was almost like if I knew that I could just open loads of drawers and cupboards, I wasn't going to get scared by anything. It's like, you can't fucking scare me because I know there's nothing in this repetitive cupboard full of leather-bound books.
So
it's like my respite.
In the 2023 version, there's much less interactivity in that regard. And if you can open cupboards, generally there's something in there that you can interact with. And I did read some notes about that, saying that they had some feedback that people were getting hung up on items that had nothing to do with the game at all, and they were saying like staring at these things that they were convinced had something to do with the story or was like a key to get in somewhere, and it was just nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've cut a lot of that out and streamlined it a bit, I think. Both good and bad. Both good and bad. Like, and good in that it feels more focused, and like we were saying, the story's more overt than the 2016 version, but worse, I think, in the trade-off in that is atmosphere and feeling like a real place. Like I constantly speak about, other than Alien Isolation, one of the things I constantly come back to in these podcasts is world building and the sense of place, and being able to open up all the cupboards and mess about with the stuff in it, even if it's irrelevant, makes the space feel more alive. And that's a trade-off that the 2023 version makes for good and bad.
Yeah, lads, he's going to love the Shenmue playthrough next year based on that.
I'm just going to, well, the problem is maybe that's maybe the whatever game we do pre-Shenmue will never ever will be the last podcast we ever do, and we'll never ever record the Shenmue one because that'll be my life. I'll just constantly just be opening drawers for the rest of my life,
going down to the capsule machine and just constantly trying to
standing at bus stops waiting for my bus in real time,
staring at his watch. Yeah. Yeah, that's got an anniversary next year, 25 years. God. So
that's one of my funniest memories of like watching the many hundreds of hours I've probably watched of Giant Bomb.
Probably thousands.
Yeah, Let's Play days. They were Let's Playing the Shenmue games, and Vinny was waiting on. He had finished work and he was waiting on the bus to go home, and he had like 40 minutes to wait. So he just put his controller down and played his guitar for a bit while he was waiting on the bus. I was like, "What is this game?" And that was after like 2 hours of racing in a forklift that he'd been doing.
I love that forklift stuff. Anyway, that forklift stuff. It could be terrible, but I remember really liking that for some reason. Who knows why?
Who knows why, Alex?
We may find out if we can handle that.
Maybe.
Have you got anything else to add about Layers of Fear? Like I said earlier on, it's fucking, like, for a good part of it, one of the scariest games I've ever played, and it couldn't even hurt me. It was just really had me so on edge. Like, constantly feeling my heart pounding in my chest. I was terrified.
Big fan of this game overall. Really enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace and palate cleanser from the sort of other stuff we've been playing recently. So it was a nice sort of break, and it's just like a good solid start to Spooktoberfest.
Yeah.
And yeah, I enjoyed it. And this is a me thing, not a game thing. I enjoyed the horror aspects of the game much more than the psychological parts of the game. When it's not that I didn't enjoy it. It just sort of, the psychological stuff sort of is a bit immersion breaking for me, in that like it sort of removes fear, because it just, like, you know, like when there's like the black ooze and stuff that you go out, eventually
totally.
at some point that feels a bit silly. And like I said it before at the start of the podcast, where you're in your office and you're going basically like up the roof, up the walls, like climbing the bookcases. That sort of stuff was a bit not for me, but certainly effective. I think it's just a taste thing, I guess.
No, you're absolutely right, though. It goes from like a terror aspect to more of a surreal aspect, and
yes, there's a surrealism to it.
When it's spent the first half like making me so scared, and then it's just trying to like make me weirded out. That is still respite from being absolutely on the edge of my seat, shit hanging out my ass in my pants. So it was never like the bit where you're in the daughter's room and you're just sort of spinning around that carousel.
Yeah,
I'm just like, well, nothing's going to happen now, because I can't even move. So I just have to. You're just going to show me weird stuff, and I just have to go. Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, as I said, the imagery throughout this, like they've done so much original art for this. Like there was some really, like I said, macabre looking shit. But if it's not actively going to make me jump, I had less to fear, and then it just felt a little bit too tame in a weird way. Like you've done the worst you can do to me, and now you're almost like giving me a breather by just showing me, ooh, look at this kooky melted painting next to some black stuff
like
while we go.
I'm assuming the people that made this game are big fans of classical art, because like you're right, it makes a jump from like the horror aspect to almost like Salvador Dali surrealism at some point.
Totally.
Yeah,
it really does.
Salvador Dali is probably a bad example, but it certainly goes surrealist anyway.
Oh, I think so. Remember when did you have to watch that film of his? Were you in that?
No, I'm thinking Salvador Dali's melted clocks and stuff.
Have you ever seen an Andalusian dog?
No.
Fuck me, man. We watched that at uni. Honestly, you won't understand how like appropriate your what's the word? Like connection to from Salvador Dali to that end of that game is, if once you've seen that.
Okay.
Fucking disgusting. Like spiders crawling out of palms of people's hands, and people like slitting their eyes with razor blades and shit. Like it's really messed up. So yeah, that's quite accurate.
Yeah. Largely positive.
Yeah.
I think
I can see why people were so high on these guys when they did this.
Again, like I'm not making assertions because I've not played all of the 2023 version, but from what I've had played of it versus the 2016 version, because I spoke to you this before, and that like I was sort of struggling in my head is like, if this 2023 remake exists, what purpose does a podcast in 2023 talking about the 2016 version serve people that might want to listen to the podcast? But it fully does, because they're actually quite different, and they're quite like they sort of stand up in their own right individually. And the 2016 version is still very much worth people's time. And in my opinion, in many ways, it's more worth people's time than the longer, less atmospheric version that they remade in 2023. But that's not to say the 2023 version is bad. It's just a different vibe entirely, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've seen the Metacritic score for the 2023 version is significantly lower than the 2016 one.
I can see that.
And I've also seen a lot of like discourse around like, does this need to have happened? Like, did they need to remake this game so soon? And what purpose does it serve? So I would be interested for David to like catch us up if you get that finished before the end of the month. If you dive back in or whatever, just to see if your mind changes at all its value. Yeah. Next up is what year is it from? This is where I try and fucking Google it again, and it goes, we can't find that URL. F.E.A.R. That doesn't exist. the next up is a game that was released for Xbox 360 on Halloween in 2006, but was previously on Windows the year earlier. It is Vivendi, who we've recently talked about making Simpsons Hit and Run. The Vivendi published Fear, First Encounter Assault Recon, FEAR. There's going to be a shitload of bullet time and little Japanese girls scaring the balls off
what's
me.
your experience / interaction with Fear to this point? Have you played it before?
I owned the Xbox 360 version from when I was at uni that I bought from Game in Aberdeen until very recently, where I bought the deluxe edition or the ultimate edition on PC, and I have never ever played it. And I am so up for a first-person shooter, man.
Yeah.
Don't know why. Just really, really keen for like shooting some stuff in first person. This is supposed to be really fucking scary, though.
I've
like,
played
really
this
scary.
like we're talking like half an hour.
Yeah.
I've played this. Yeah, of this era, because I think I don't know what engine this is. Is this a Unity engine as well? This one? Because it's got whatever they made Left 4 Dead in, which I want to say is Unity as well. Maybe it's not.
I'm just laughing because apparently you can use a rocket launcher at some point in this game. You know, yeah, lots of reflex time stuff. Basically, just bullet time. What engine did you say you thought it was in?
Unity.
Oh, right. I don't know if I can see that at a quick glance.
Okay, but I can still make my point without it. But basically, my memories of it is one of my like we've played Left 4 Dead recently. Well, isn't that recently? It must be over a year now. But anyway, we have played Left 4 Dead for this podcast, and as much as I love that game, I have a standout memory of when you're shooting in that game, the guns don't feel like they've got much weight, and you sort of move about like you feel like you're on ice. So like there's not much camera wobble, and you just sort of slide around shooting these guns that have no weight to them. That's my memory of Fear, and it's quite quick and slick, but there's no sense of actual movement, and the guns are lightweight. But we'll see.
Hopefully the version we've now got for PC is somewhat improved from. Did you play 360?
Yeah, it would have been on 360. Yeah. I would think.
Yeah. So I hope, that's not as noticeable now, and this should hopefully be a pretty good version of it.
Hopefully,
you could be right, but this game is influenced by so many things that I really like.
So on
that
paper, it's an Alex.
Should
Alex
love
game.
it. Yeah, because it's like you just glance over the Wikipedia and it's talking about stuff like they wanted to make it like a John Woo film, like Hard Boiled and The Matrix, and then the atmosphere and horror elements are stuff to do with like Japanese horror, like The Grudge and The Eye and Ringu and stuff like that. And also they wanted to do stuff to do with Akira. So like you're talking so many parts of my language here that I am really psyched, and I really hope I don't hate it.
I think
because if I do hate it, the next podcast is going to be not what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, it'll be something completely different. There's a chance that this game will genuinely scare me. I've got vague. It's not vague at all. I have got incredibly distinct memories of being in primary school when I watched The Exorcist for the first time, and it scared the living bejesus out of me. Like I honestly couldn't sleep for weeks. I was like so affected by that movie, and. To this day, I am still unsettled by sort of girls in a nightie with long hair. So there's a chance this game is going to scare the life out of me. I did see that there's a new Exorcist movie just come out of the cinema. I'm like, I'm going to have to go see this. It's going to unsettle me. But yeah, like The Ring scares the life out of me. Exorcist don't like that. Exorcist Emily Rose, I remember people finding that incredibly funny when I was in the cinema, and I was terrified. There's the and I think that's why it's like there was a found footage one. What's it called? Where it's like the reason I'm talking about it is because it had an Xbox. I think the follow up they had a Kinect in it. That was in the living room, and they had the Kinect viewpoint, with all the green dots, and you could see the ghost in the background. and I can't remember, but basically the kid would start getting possessed, and then it would be like camera found footage in the bedroom, and the kid would start.
Paranormal Activity.
Paranormal Activity. People find that funny. That is not funny to me. That film. That is so scary. Anyway,
I've never seen that, but I know people were going crazy for that at the time, obviously because of the lack of budget and stuff.
Girls, possession, long hair, 90s, standing around. It's probably why I may never have. I remember going home one night, because it was about when we were at uni. I was speaking to my mum about it, and I was like, it freaks me out that the kid's just standing there in the doorway watching it. It was like genuinely scary. Mum's like, don't have kids because they do that. I was like, okay, maybe I'm never having kids.
Since that day,
if I wake up and my kid is standing in the doorway just staring at me, they might be going down the stairs. There's a chance.
But punted.
Yeah, it's like a drop goal. Get out.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll let you know if that happens. The worst thing at the moment is that my daughter has found a tone of voice in which to try and manipulate us.
Oh, excellent.
And she started crouching. She started like crouching down and being like, Mr. Tumble on phone, yeah? Watch Mr. Tumble on phone, yeah? It's like, no. She was doing it so much yesterday. She loves, because my light in my room can change color. Mm-hmm. She's like really good at changing the color. So I'll sit there and be like, oh, can I have a blue light, please? And she'll be like, she'll love it. But when we're not doing that, she'll be like, change the lights in your room, yeah? Change lights in room, yeah. And here we go. Look, wait.
Check that
out. That does remind me though. What I wanted to ask you. You obviously on Twitter asked for some recommendations for horror TV shows, films. Have you got anything like planned that you're going to watch? I feel like I'm going to try and watch a load of horror stuff this month.
Yeah,
as well.
So no, I'm sort of still planning. Let me see what. So I got some. I actually, like, you gave me some great recommendations. I had another.
You have to watch Marianne, and if Annie's into horror and doesn't mind subtitles,
she's not, but she will sort of get through it.
So it's brilliant, honestly.
So good that show. I really love horror, and she doesn't. So she's losing in this scenario in which she's just sort of learning to close her eyes. We went to. It was probably about 6 months ago, but we went to cinema to see. Is it Smile?
Oh yeah.
And Annie, don't think she was in the movie. She was in the theater, but I don't think she's seen basically any of that movie. She just sat with her eyes closed the whole time. Yeah, Marianne. I want to see, and I also got another one that was something called Them. Have you heard of that? It's a TV series.
Oh, okay.
The girl that said it to me, I knew her from when I was younger, and she lives in Australia now. But she's like, "Oh, you must have heard of this." But Them is really good. And I was like, "Oh, is this the thing that's maybe not made it to the UK?" But basically, it's set in 1953. Them follows a black family that moves to North Carolina to an all-white neighborhood in LA during the Second Great Migration. The family's idyllic home slowly transforms into an epicenter of evil forces next door and otherworldly that threaten that threaten to haunt, ravage, and destroy them. I was like, yes, that might be fun. So that
sounds really similar to something I've seen.
And while you're thinking of that, KDB recommended VHS.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he?
I remember quite liking Rec, and I assume it's along the same lines. So
Rec's supposed to be really, really messed up.
That may also be on the cards because I enjoyed Rec back in the day, and I'm assuming it's a similar idea. I did Google it, and it seems to be a series of movies.
You could try Barbarian if you've not seen that on Disney. If you've got
not
Disney.
Seen that.
Pretty messed up.
Historical war drama?
No. I think it's called Barbarian.
Is it a movie or a TV show?
Movie.
Let's see, Disney Plus.
It's still on there.
Arriving in Detroit for a job interview, a young woman books a rental home. But when she arrives late at night, she discovers that the house is double booked and a strange man is already staying there. Against her better judgment, she decides to spend the evening, but soon discovers that there's a lot more to fear than just an unexpected house guest. Yeah, that might be cool as well.
Yeah, that's the last film I can remember me and Rach watching together.
Yeah, I want to fall
Pretty fucked up.
Fall down a big horror hole. Since I've started really enjoying doing that. Just sort of in October, just going nuts with horror.
Yeah.
What am I going to? I think we were planning on going to the cinema tomorrow to make up for the one that we didn't go to because it was raining. So let me see what's on.
I was so desperate to hear what David was going to see at the secret screening, and then we'll never know.
We'll never know. I actually think I did know what it was.
And it wasn't the whatever it was that I said. The creator. Or whatever.
I don't think it was in the end, but yeah, A Haunting in Venice is maybe the one I'm going to go see tomorrow.
Okay. Don't know what that is.
It's post World War II Venice Poirot. Oh, it's a Poirot one, so yeah, that will be the one because I like a Poirot movie. So I don't think it's a horror, but basically Poirot now retired and living in exile. Yeah, I like the first. I was going to say the first two, but like the sort of first two of the reinvented Poirot movies that they've done over the last couple of years. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be the one. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, let us know in the next couple of episodes of the pod what you've watched and see if anything I need to see.
Yeah, exactly. And check back in next time for Fear, Fear.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Winners You podcast. If you liked what you heard, and even if you didn't, why not give our numbers a bump by subscribing to our podcast on your podcast feed of choice? Or if you prefer to imbibe your podcast in a visual format, you can head over to YouTube and search our Winners You podcast where you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have the Simpsons one going live tomorrow, so be ready for that. If the podcast isn't enough for your bi-weekly dose of a Winners You chattery, you can also follow us on the website formerly known as Twitter at WinnersYouPod, and you can even send us an email to tell us how wrong we are about the opinions we've been extolling tonight about layers of fear or anything else that may have come out of our mouths during the course of the podcast. You send that email by writing to awinnersyupod@gmail.com. Alex and I also have Twitter at David Smiley and at SuperThrillix respectively. We also have TikTok now. Just head over there and search a Winners You Pod and it'll pop up somewhere. Alex, have you got any housekeeping?
No.
Nothing on the docket? No themes for us to discuss?
The new Hall of Fame podcast did come out yesterday, so Monday.
What was your choice in the end? Because this is for games that...
Oh, that was Bloodborne, wasn't it? Yes. So
yes.
That's the one I discussed last time around. So that poll is up there now. So if you fancy giving a hand to your boy
That's
listeners,
a hard
go
one.
over there.
Like, what are you asking the listeners to vote on? There?
Just the best one. I did say this at the time. Like the listeners are voting based on just if they like the game. Like there's no significance to it's the best one of this. It's just this is good, innit?
Yeah.
Vote for that. And when one of the fucking other people said Street Fighter 2, it's like, come on.
You're like, come on.
This category is all kinds of fucked up. The most random 4 games we've ever had put together. It's so stupid. But there we go. So I don't make the categories.
You just fill them in.
I just embellish them for audio pleasure.
I guess for me, I've got my Substack, so head over to Substack, and I have no idea. Just search for my name, and you can subscribe and get a weekly newsletter into your inbox about video game news. And on that bombshell, I've been David, he has been Alex, and we have been a Winners You and Cola, and I'm out.
Boy.